Welcome to Cover Book Beat. I'm your host, Roger Nichols. We're recording this on, at least in my country, on this day. It's August 30th, which is International Whale Shark Day. And who better than a guest and a marine biologist who is also a published poet? Sally Ann Hunter is also an environmental policy officer, and she has published a collection of poetry called The Structure of Light and a biography called You Can't Keep a Good Man Down from Parkinson's to a New Life with Deep Brain Stimulation. A paper she wrote on the biography read on Australia Broadcasting Corporation's Occam's Razor radio program, as was a paper on living with solar power. A number of her poems have been published in anthologies and online. Her latest is a work of fantasy, Transfigured Sea, an actual novel. She lives in the Adelaide Hills with her cat Francis, and she joins us from Australia. Welcome.
Welcome, Roger. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Before we talk about Transfigured Sea, let's find out a bit more about you. I understand we have David Attenborough to thank you for your interest in the sea.
Oh, yes. I wonder who told you that.
Well, I watched an earlier interview. I won't pretend that I knew that. So yes.
Well, I was studying English literature at university as a mature age student. I'd done 2.5 years, and David Attenborough's program Life on Earth was broadcast on television. And when I got home from university, I used to watch that. And it really inspired me. He has so much love for all living creatures. And that was infectious. And I immediately wanted to study biology. And so I changed from English literature, studied biology, and ended up with a science degree. And from there, it's sort of like the more you know about something, the more you love it. And the more you love it, the more you want to protect it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I studied environmental studies and got a master's degree in knowing how to protect the environment.
Well, I think the book itself, and we'll get to that in a moment, is just, how shall I say it? It's a poem extended, if I might use that metaphor, because it is a love song to the sea. I really think so.
Yes, it's a very nice way of putting it.
Too often people feels like marine biology are a science and needs to stay in your own lane, and art and science are incompatible. But I don't think it is, and I don't think you see any problem in blending the two.
Oh no, I don't. I don't see science as people in their laboratory wearing white coats. I see science as people out in the environment, taking measurements, making observations. That's what I like to see. And this book is poetic, it's lyrical, the way it's written, and it has been called enchanting.
Mm-hmm.
It is a fantasy because it's about two women who live in the sea. And if they're going to be able to breathe underwater, they need some help. And in the book, in Transfigured Sea, Laura finds a conch shell on the beach.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like this one.
Ah,
If you can see that.
absolutely, yes, gorgeous.
Thank you. And she loves it too. And she puts it in her pocket. It enables them to breathe underwater. It enables them to find direction so they can move from one ecosystem in the ocean to the next, just like a GPS. And it gives them information about the creatures that they meet on their way, just like Wikipedia on the internet.
Indeed. And I will say this, if you read this book, or when you read this book, you will find a number of engaging descriptions and background information, not only about the sea itself, but about a bunch of different creatures that live and flourish in the sea. Um, was there a particular incident that led you to write this book?
Oh, well, a particular incident? No. Um, my partner and I fantasized a lot. And one of our fantasies was that I was her mother and she was my daughter. And so I included that in the book. And we both loved the sea and the beach. Um, so I had the mother and daughter at the beach, and the daughter is the Sea Sprite. Later on, motherhood comes into the book again, because Laura had a bad relationship with her own mother, and she has to work that through for her own self-development. And the Sea Sprite becomes Daphne,
Mhm.
and she also had some bad experiences in her past, and she needs a lot of nourishment and nurturing to heal what was broken.
Well, this when you think about the length of this book, there's transformation. It's a journey at the same way, and it's also almost a coming of age feel for Daphne a bit in terms of background.
Yes, I think so. Yes, the women want to work on their own makeup while they're exploring the ocean, but they have no idea of how profound the changes will be that come to them.
Mhm.
I won't give that away. That's the end of the book. People will have to read the book to find out.
Yeah. Well, you were working in the fantasy genre here, not only because they can have this magic shell and they can breathe under the sea, but you also have a couple of species that are tangentially involved. And I won't be able to pronounce the one of them correctly, but they have these are the ones that are sea nymphs, and the naiads are the freshwater nymphs.
Yes, that's right. The Nereids.
Thank you.
Uh, they're from Greek mythology, and they are benevolent. They will help you if you're in trouble in the ocean. And they sing and dance and laugh like little children. They're a great delight. They they often go to be with their father, King Nereus, king of the ocean, who is in a golden grotto in the depths of the ocean. And sometimes they leave him and go to their own place, which is a silver grotto nearby. But often they are out in the ocean playing with dolphins, riding dolphins, and looking out for any humans who might need some help.
At one point, without giving too much away, they're very nice to our protagonists here. So
That's right,
yeah,
especially Daphne.
yeah. Um, One of the things that I found interesting is that you have included, as a poet should, some poetry in the book, and I wonder if we could share some of that with us today.
Oh, yes, certainly. Um, I could read you a poem about Antarctica.
Lovely.
Antarctica was a good place for the women to visit. They enjoyed that and their relationship flourished. They thought they had reached fulfillment, but it was a false ending. I'll just put the phone down for a minute if that's all right.
Of course.
Now, can you hear me?
Absolutely, yes. Thank you.
Antarctica, in the shapes and textures of white and a pristine, savage silence, we find the inner structure of pure mind and the awful coherence of primordial crystal.
Thank you.
And I'll read another one.
Oh, please, please.
That one was quite profound. This one a little less so. The melting sea ice makes magic with mosaic of crystal pieces, mirroring the radiance and fragility of elfin enlightenment.
I love the alliteration and the elfin enlightenment. Yeah, it's a fitting end.
Good.
There, I suppose you could also look in the book as an extended metaphor because there are many, many smaller metaphors, and the whole thing is a metaphor for what happens in the environment and what happens with the two relationship between the two. And that begins at the beginning, I think.
Yes, that's right. Well, the sea is a symbol of mother. It always has been in ancient mythology. And in this book, the sea is a whisper of emotion and a memory of intuition. The sea is a dream, and the sea is a place of change. The sea itself is always changing. The edge of the sea can't be defined because it's always changing with waves and currents, tides and king tides and tectonic plates moving and continents shifting, icebergs melting and sea level rising or falling. All these things take place either very slowly or quite quickly. And the sea is always changing, and it changes the people who enter it.
Not only that, but unfortunately, we are changing the sea with runoff from agricultural chemicals, with pollution of various sorts, with garbage, and it's not a place you want. And overfishing, of course.
Yes, overfishing is the worst threat, but plastic pollution is pretty bad. On my website, sallyannhunter.com, I have a list of the threats, the main threats to the ocean, and I also have a list of action that we can take to help protect the ocean. And one of these things, we must stop plastic getting into the ocean. And one way that it does get in is through people dropping litter. And the litter is blown or washed by the rain into the creek. From the creek, it goes to the river, and from the river to the ocean. So we should always put our litter in a good rubbish bin. However, make sure it's a good rubbish bin. The other day, I was out in the car and I saw a rubbish bin and a big black crow, which was taking everything out of the rubbish bin in its search for food.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of plastic and paper litter lying around on the ground next to the rubbish bin.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to have bins that have heavy lids or metal grids even,
Mm-hmm.
to prevent birds and animals from pulling the rubbish out.
It would feel very silly to have done all the work yourself and then have an animal uh, dislodge it again, as it were. But these things happen, and that's a very important point, and I thank you very much. One of the metaphors or similes that took me to heart was one of the earliest in the book, where you call shells the flowers of the beach. That's a remarkable image in my head. Thank you for that. It,
Yes. Well, I'm glad you like the metaphors. Um, I employ a style of writing called nature writing, which is where the natural environment is given as much attention as any other main character in the book. And this is a style of writing that's becoming more and more popular. More and more writers are using nature writing, from Inga Simpson to Richard Powers and many other writers. And this is what I've done as well.
one of the things I do when I read books is I take notes, and I take lots of them. You've got 7 pages of tightly packed notes from your book here.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I wanted to quote one for you and have a question about it. It says, in that time, Laura had just begun to enjoy poetry. Poetry gave her life. It was like water to a flower. The only time Laura felt alive and powerful was to do with poetry. It's not only expressed her very being, it also showed her who he was. Now, it's always a mistake to attribute the act of a character as that of the author, but somehow I have a feel that might be reflective of your own experience.
Yes, very similar. Yes, very similar.
Yeah.
Yes, Laura is a poet and a biologist, and so am I. So there are some similarities there.
And I also wonder about this because the talk about Laura's mother, does that have any relevance to your own personal experience?
Well, that's possibly true. Um, the mother in the book, Laura's mother, is not a bit like my mother.
Ah,
My
good.
mother dressed well. She took great pride in her appearance, whereas the mother in the book is dowdy, wears socks with sandals, which is usually a no-no. And she was, yeah, very dowdy and unpleasant to look at, and quite different from my mother.
Well, apparently, and Laura's mother is not a fan of poetry at all. I'm sure that's not the same in your household.
uh, I don't think I'll go into that.
Okay, all right. Let me, again, one of the things that struck me is the way you're able to seamlessly work in these little vignettes about all the different creatures. I would like to read one if you don't mind. Um,
No.
it's about limpets. It says, between waves, as well as when the tide is out, they pull themselves hard against the rock, making a watertight seal. In so doing, they make a groove on the rock, which is a mirror image of their shell. By following their own trail of slime, they can return to the same place every time they leave it. Laura wonders whether this describes some people. And I love the stacked nature of that comment because it makes a comment and lets her comment on it at the same time. Very nicely done.
Thank you. Yes, there are quite a few parallels between the sea creatures and the women, either with the form or shape of the creature or their behaviour. And this parallel is very important. As you get towards the end of the book, you will find the parallel between the creatures and the women is very important, very significant.
It is indeed. And the whole thing resonates, I will have to say. And I probably don't have the adequacy of a poet to describe how good it is, but I'll just say it was very impressive. I'll put it that way.
Oh, thank you.
What
That's lovely.
what do you hope when they close the book, they take away with them?
Well, spiritually, I hope they find some peace. I hope they find an awareness that spiritual things can happen to ordinary people in the here and now. This is a reality in the world, and we can't deny it. It's beautiful. We should enjoy it.
As always, masterfully said. I appreciate that so much. Is there anything we have not mentioned? Let's talk about where people can find you and your work online.
Yes, sallyannhunter.com. That's Sally Ann Hunter, all one word, all lowercase, and there's no E on Anne.
Okay.
So sallyannhunter.com.
And you have a blog, you have stuff about the books you've written. It's well worth people's time to go that direction.
Yes, thank you. There's a contact page, and people can buy the book through the website.
Nice. That's a nice convenience. I appreciate that a great deal. I want to thank you for making time for us today. You have been extraordinary, and I feel the extraordinary ability to be talk with you live from Australia, from my place on the west coast of the United States. So it's technology sometimes has advantages.
When it works.
When it works, yes, indeed. Our guest today, Sally Ann Hunter. The book is Transfigured Sea. It is an interesting, fascinating read. Thank you very much, and I wish you all the best and hope to get back for your next book.
Thank you so much, Roger. It's been a pleasure.